Hi, this is Rene Christensen, author of Training Them Wisely, Discipling Kids. And today I am here with Sarah, and we're going to talk to you about different ways that she is investing in kids. So, Sarah, thank you so much for coming on. So, just tell us a little bit about your family.
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for having me on. So my name is Sarah Arnold. That's a recent name change for me. I just got married about a month and a week ago. So my family, growing up, there was six of us in a family. We were homeschooled all the way through. I tell people all the time, it wasn't just mom and dad raising us. We had both sets of grandparents, and so we kind of had like six parents growing up. And because we were homeschooled and mom had the opportunity to work, at home with us and, homeschool us. We got to do a lot of stuff together and then a lot of stuff with older adults. So we always had a lot of input from older adults growing up. And so I guess that kind of leads into like why I do what I do now. But so the current family is just my husband and I. That shift happened again almost a month and a half ago. And so I met him actually through my job about 10 years ago. He was the one that trained me in CPR initially. And so we kind of fell out of touch and then got back in touch about a year and a half ago. And so, whirlwind romance, and ended in marriage. And so we're looking forward to the day when we start adding to our family. And so what I do for work is I work for the University of Tennessee Extension. And so it's most well known for things like agriculture, 4-H, which is our youth program. And then I work specifically with family and consumer science, which is the old home ec stuff. And so I teach and work with a wide range of people. One of those audiences being youth, which just excites me because I've always loved kids. It's been just a big passion of mine throughout life. And so I'm happy to be able to continue working with them, even in the professional setting.
So, tell me more about how you do work with kids. Like, how do you interact with them? Where do you get to see them, and what do you teach them?
We do a variety within my job. The main place that I interact and intersect with kids is through the school system. And so during the school year, I'm in there about once a month doing nutrition lessons. And so we're just going through the 5 food groups, which should be, real basic, but it's amazing the conversations that come out of real basic stuff. And I'll share one of those stories in just a second with you. In addition to working in the schools, we also work with after school, and then during the summer, we work with a lot of day camps throughout the community. So we work closely with our community center. I do a lot of activities down at our local swimming pool, and so you're interacting with kids all the time there. I've also, in the last several years, volunteered to help with several VBSs with local churches because they're always short leaders, it seems. And when you're single, it's real easy to have you come and pull. And so through my work, most of it is through school activities. We have a few, so I teach a sewing group, and so they come here to the office. And so I like those better because you get some more one-on-one time. When you're in the classroom, you have, 1 on 25 or 1 on 18. And it's a lot harder to have those conversations. But you can still have them. And so one story, if I can find it, I'll have to pull my notes up. Because this is just one that has always stuck with me. I also wrote a book, and so this whole story is in this book. But there was one time, because you think when you're working with kids, I feel like a lot of people like, oh, they're just kids, they're not thinking everything through, they're not processing. Well, one time we were in there and we were talking about grains, why grains are important, has nothing to do with really anything other than physical development. And so this is, how this falls in. Some kid in class, because in schools, there's all these rules about what you can and can't say. Yeah. And being a Christian in the secular world, sometimes it's harder because you have to be very selective with what you say because you can't lead conversation. Mm-hmm. Now, if they ask questions, you're welcome to say anything you want. And so somehow, in the middle of talking about grains, the kids get this conversation shifted to God. Is he alive or is he dead? And I'm, keep, backtracking back to grains because I'm like, what, this has nothing to do with anything we're talking about. And then all of a sudden, everybody started asking questions about God being raised from the dead. And I'm like, okay, well, if they're asking, we're just going to go here. Well, then one little kid pipes in the middle of class and he goes, God's magic. And I'm like, time out. No, he's not. Um, and so the kids were like, what do you mean he's not magic? And I said, guys, there's a difference in magic where it's a trick, it's an illusion, it's something that, is made to look one way, but it's not. I said, God is not that way. I said, exactly who he is and what he does. That's exactly what it is. There's no trick to it. And so we got a really brief conversation where we got to talk about how God is not magic. Because then it was, well, oh, he's like Santa Claus. And I'm like, no, he's not like Santa Claus. And so it was really neat for me in the middle of what should have just been a normal lesson on why grains are important for our body and what they do for our body. These kids, and I mean, we're talking usually the kids that I'm with are between kindergarten and third grade. And so they're little and they have these questions. And I'm blessed because where we live is a very rural, in essence, Christian community. They all go to church, whether they believe or not, they all go to church. But to get that chance to interact with those kids and have those conversations, because half of them had grown up in church, like, well, this is what I heard at church, and this is what I heard. And so it was just really neat to engage because it's what I call the teachable moments. They just pop up with kids. And that's one of my favorite things about working with kids is because you never know what they're going to say. And so you can take their lead, especially when you're in that secular workplace where you can't jump in with your thoughts and you can answer their questions, but help guide and direct, which I just think is really cool.
That is, I love that story. That's great. And that was just an example of you basically taking your normal life that God has you living and still being a light for him when you have that opportunity, being available to be used. And the other thing I really liked what you said is that when you're single or even now married, but without kids, it's so true. You have so many opportunities where you can be used because you do have so much more flexibility. And kids, I think too, it's a different kind of relationship with somebody that's younger, a young adult. Kids look up to them in a different type of way than they do even whenever you're older. And you can be really influential in kids' lives and you have the time to do that. So that is one thing that I encourage my daughter who's still single. She's actually a children's minister, so she's investing in kids all the time. But I'm like, while you have this single time, it's the time where you can really have so much flexibility and an ability to be able to serve others. And Jesus loved children. He said, let them come to him. I mean, he does not want us to mislead children. He talks about how important it is for us to disciple kids, to talk to them. And so it's something that he's told us that we're supposed to be doing. And being single is actually the perfect time to be able to do it. You can do it throughout your life. But so many people think that since they don't have kids, they can't really invest in kids. But that's not true. As a single person, you can really invest in kids. You were a kid once.
Oh,
you need lots of kids. You can definitely work with kids.
And it's neat because and I've always been, I don't know if it's weird or just like God wired me, but my grandmother did daycare when she was younger. And so we grew up around her and around kids. And we always talked about how she had like this like magical, kids could do anything for her. It didn't matter which she could get them to do anything. And I don't know if I've inherited that trait or whatever, but kids have always, I've just always done well with kids. I've always enjoyed, babysitting, nanny, whatever. I just love investing in their little minds and hearts. But it's so true when you're in that single state and that's been one of the things that my husband and I have been working through because I've done so much. Now that I'm married, he's going, well, wait, where's my time? And so learning that balance of, well, what do you cut back while still investing and engaging? Because I'm like, this is important to me. And I tell people all the time, I don't have any kids of my own, but I'll tell people that I have, 200 in the county because I would do anything for these kids. And they're not mine. My sister has 2, my best friend has 2, my brother has 1. And I'm like, I can't, and I was talking to my husband, I'm like, I can't imagine what it'll be like when we have our own, because I'm like, I would do anything for these kids and I love them so much. I can't imagine what it's like when it's my own, because when I have, when I'm having them or, babysitting or watching them for, anybody, they're just mine. I'm going to treat them like they're mine. And so it's just neat to get to see, and I mean, because they'll process stuff with you, and they're quick learners. They're super quick
Yes.
learners.
They're so curious and so inquisitive, and they're able to understand so much.
Yes.
They're not little adults. Their brains are maturing, but still what they're able to understand and that simple faith that they can have is such an amazing thing to see. And I learn things as I talk to kids because yeah, it's just really neat to see. And I love like their different questions. Like you said, they can just come up with these rabbit trails. You're like, wow, where did that come from? And open up so many conversations that way.
Yeah,
So
I absolutely.
you mentioned that you wrote a book. What was the name of your book?
So the book is so there's two of them. The first one is Knowing This. It's a 90-day devotional journal experience because I'm a writer as well. I love writing and journaling. That's how I learn. And then the second one, which is where that story that I referenced came from, is called Growing Deeper. And it's only 30 days because 90 days is a long time to write for. So there's 90 and 30. But so those, and the first one has a couple stories that I had earmarked in case, we needed additional things to talk about. With other stories where I'd interacted with kids because they do, like, we say, and, we've talked about how influential it is to impact kids and, as adults to invest in them and teach them and train them. But also there's that flip side. They're teaching us.
Yes.
And so one of them that came to mind, and it's in the first book, is one of the VBSs I was helping out with. I was working with older kids. I think it was like 5th and 6th grade that I had that year. And 5th and 6th grade, they're starting to get that independent.
Yes.
It's too cool to sing and dance these moves and all this, whatever.
And their
so
brains are so much more mature all of a sudden. They can understand so much more. I love that grade. Yes.
Oh, see, I like the younger ones is my favorite. And so this was a growing week for me because I was working with a group that I don't normally work with. And all week long, we'd get to the singing part and they wouldn't want to do anything. And I'd encourage you, come on. And, I'd set the example and I'd be up there dancing and singing and whatever. And there was this song that year in the VBS that I just loved. Like, it's just beautiful. And I wanted my group to sing that song selfishly. And they really wanted to sing another song. And I'm like, you haven't sung that song all week. Why'd you pick that song? Like, of all the songs to pick, why'd you pick that one? Well, we got to the awards night and I was not in a good place. I was grouchy and tired. You've worked all week and then done VBS all night. And then I'm like, these kids are going to get up here and it's just going to be a disaster. They got up there and sang their little hearts out. They knew every word, every dance move, and I'm just sitting there and like my mind was blown because I'm going, even though it didn't look like they were paying attention, they had soaked it all up.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was a challenge to go, even when you're working with kids, because it can be exhausting. And I mean, I don't have kids of my own. It can be exhausting when you have them for short periods of time and they're not listening, or you think I'm doing all of this and nothing is connecting. And then all of a sudden there's going to be that moment where it connects and you're just like, oh, this hasn't been for nothing.
Yes.
And so I always encourage people, it's not just, work with kids because you can teach them and they are going to teach you so much stuff.
And even whenever they are moving around, it's amazing whenever you ask them questions afterwards and they're able to answer everything. And I think kids need movement and motion sometimes to even be able to learn. And yet, whenever you actually talk to them, you're like, oh, wow, you
actually
got it. That's great. So why do you think it is important to invest in kids and to disciple kids and for them to be poured into? Because I know not, especially in the county, not all of those kids are getting solid relationships that they have to go to. And so I just think it is so important for each kid to have a loving adult in their life. But what are some reasons that you think it's important?
So growing up, the reason I always I loved it. First of all, we were always around older people. So I've always done better with younger people because I was watching them, or older people because that's who I was around. My own age group. I'm like, what do I do with you? And so you get a lot of wisdom passed down. And like my dad always taught us, there's two schools. There's the school of experience and the school of knowledge. The school of knowledge is learning from other people's mistakes to hopefully spare yourself. And then there's a school of experience, which we're all going to go through. But if you can learn a few things without having experienced it, you're going to save yourself some time and heartache. And so investing in kids gives them that chance. They're also our future. And there are days when I'm like, it's not looking good. And then you'll see a couple kids and you're like, oh, I have some hope. There is light. There is a chance that we are still going to have good things in the future. But if we're not teaching them society, social media, media in general, they're not helping. And so if we're not investing and we're not there, we're not present teaching our kids the morals and values that we would like them to have, nobody is. And like you said, there's so many families, and you see it all the time, working in the school system, there's so many families that don't have the time, and they never had the relationships. They don't know how to have the relationships, or they're, incapable. My husband works in emergency services, and we were even talking just last night. I was like, I'm in these classrooms of kindergartners, and I'm like, it's these, 5-year-olds that have their whole future ahead of them. I said, right now, they're, clean, well kept, smart, they're, headed the right direction. But I'm going, because I know what happens as the years go on. I'm like, like half of these kids are going to be lost in the system. And to me, that's heartbreaking. Because I'm going, it doesn't have to be that way. Like, you can do better, you can have better. But for so many of them, they don't have anybody. And so I guess kind of like what you were saying, that one person can make the world of difference. And so through work, I don't know how much sciencey stuff that you do or follow or have talked about. ACE is a big thing right now. And so these are the adverse child syndrome, and everybody has a score. And the more you have, usually the worse your trajectory is. The one thing though that makes the difference, scientifically based now, which I'm like, no brainer, one adult, one caring adult. It doesn't matter how many ACEs you have, one adult can totally change the outcome. And for me, I guess so much of it is whether or not I have my own kids, whether or not, whatever happens, like if I can be that one adult for one kid, it will have been worth it.
I love that. Did they, in the study, does it say how much time that one adult needs to spend with them?
They've done a lot more research, and I haven't followed the current. I don't know that there's a set time on that. I would obviously assume it's not just, 1 hour, but I've also been around kids that, they were around this person for just an hour a week, and it made the world of difference.
Because I was thinking my 4th grade Sunday school teacher made a big impact in my life. I still remember her. I remember what she taught me. And it was 1 year for 1 hour. I mean, and that's all that she was in my life. And yet, whenever I make decisions still, she had us memorize Psalm 139. And I don't know. I remember her advice. I remember what she said. And making decisions has been easier as an adult because of that 1 year, 1 hour that she invested in my life.
Yeah, it's not like people, and I've worked with some mentoring groups, and they're like, it's such a commitment, and I'm going, it's not as much as you would think. But even, the little, just like you're, the littlest things, it can be a librarian, it can be your Sunday school teacher, it can be a teacher, it can be the lady that does our community center here in town. She's going to have diamonds and rubies and everything in her crown someday because she invests in these kids every day, and has for years. And she doesn't put up with nonsense.
Yeah.
And so
it's so important. I feel like whenever you said that they are our future, that's just not cliche. It really is the truth. Yeah. And what kids are coming out of high school believing, what they are not being, things they are being exposed to, truth that they're not hearing, it makes a huge difference. And it really does. And if we continue on the current trajectory that we're going in America with these kids, it's going to be a problem, honestly. And to be able to make a difference in a child's life can actually make a big difference. And if everybody, if many people could just start investing in kids, I feel like we could really change the trajectory, because being able to teach kids the truth, being able to invest in them and show them Christ's love through us, like true biblical love, can make a big difference in any child's life. And for them to learn to love God's word, for them to love and know the importance of it, and to have that relationship with God can truly change their lives. That's what we've seen whenever we were working with these community kids who have very difficult lives, abject poverty, dangerous living situations. Just investing in their life, once they know and believe in God and in his word, they make Jesus their savior, I just the difference in their life and how their behavior and everything just from that decision and from having somebody pour into them makes a big difference from where their life probably would have ended up statistically,
Uh,
and so just to every single person matters to God, right? Because every person's made in God's image, and God loves children, and
mhm.
He wants us to invest in children. And I think sometimes we can be overwhelmed by how much children need to be invested in and how many children there are to be invested in. But even if you can invest in a few kids and make a difference in their life, it can make an impact. It really can.
Yeah, well, and that's like when I started, because I've always loved writing, always, from the time I was little, and kind of put it away during college because you're studying, doing all this work. I was working nannying a lot, and so you didn't have time. And when I got out, I remember there was a distinct day that I felt the Lord telling me it's time to start writing, and this time it's for me. Um, because I had been talking to so many people, and obviously in this job, you're in a rural Christian community. And I say that loosely because I think, especially in the South, and I don't know, how far the range goes that your listeners are, but especially in the South, I think there's a lot of people that, oh, we believe, but that's where it stops. There's no carry over into like it actually affects my life. And like I, read my Bible and I do what it says. And I was talking to so many people when I first started this job, and kids even, that they grew up in church, but they couldn't tell you how God or the Bible actually applied to their lives. And I'm just like, what do you mean? Because the way we have been raised is just like you were saying, taking that time to actually invest in them and show them genuine Christ love, like not just this fake, oh, we have to love everybody. Like, no, like the rubber meets the road and love is hard.
Yes.
Love is really hard. And it's not always easy. Um, and so that's kind of what started, because I was like, there's so many things that happen in my life where I see God's hand at work, or a reminder, or, just so many things. And so that's what actually kind of started up that devotional, because I was like, if I can see it so clearly, I want other people to know it's not, you don't have to do some deep dive Bible study to understand God's love. Like, there's the Bible verses that talk about even the rocks cry. Like, you can't look at nature and not go, there's a God. And so for me, a lot of them, they're just practical, everyday things that people experience and they go through, and how God, or this Bible verse or whatever, it comes from my personal emotions is where those came from, because it's not like investing in kids isn't hard, in the sense of you have to carve out all this time. It's just inviting them into what you're already doing.
Yes. And knowing the truth yourself. And that's why the book that I wrote, Training Them Wisely, Discipling Kids, the first half of the book is about how to have a relationship with God.
Mhm.
Because whenever you do have a relationship with God, when you're spending time in His Word and knowing Him, then you can pour into kids,
You
right?
can't
Because
pour
you have
from an empty
something that
vessel.
you can actually pour into them. And so just being able to do that, I think is really important. And so is your, can't talk. Are your books available to be purchased somewhere?
So they're on Amazon. I brought the first one with me today. This is what the first one looks like. These were the ones I tagged. And this is my sister. This is not me. Everybody thinks this is me. This is not me. But they are on Amazon. So you can find them on Amazon, hardcover, softcover. I think the first one is an ebook as well for people who like ebooks. I don't think the second one is. Me personally, I like to touch it, feel it, write in it. I know that's not everybody.
Well, we
Um,
can drop a link to those in the notes for today's
sure.
so that people can have
Um,
access to that as well.
but yeah, you're exactly right. You can't pour from an empty vessel, so you have to start with yourself.
Yes. Yes. And very important with that. Okay. And so this is just a fun question.
Yeah.
Who was the most influential person in your life and why?
So when I think about this question, because people ask this actually a lot more than you would think. Um, there's a lot of people that come to mind. But one that I think in a lot of ways has kind of shaped a lot of who I am is my grandmother. And I'll try not to get emotional because she is on the road to dementia right now. And so in a way, you're losing who she was.
Yes.
But she was one who did nursery work and daycare, and she had us. So growing up, we were in a small church. My granddad was the pastor. And so Mama had all of us, from the time we were in nursery. She did the nursery. And so even as we got older, she would take the older kids back and help with nursery. And so there's so many things that she taught us from an early age, but she's also the one that taught us how to cook. She's the one that taught us how to do biscuits. She did all sorts of stuff outside with us, with crafts and things. And as I grew older, because also my parents were also in there, influential people, they had kind of shifted my career and where I was headed. But the line of work I'm in now, in a lot of ways, is exactly what my grandmother did 60 years ago. And there's a lot of similarities. And so in a lot of ways, it's the little things. Like as a kid, it was no big deal to do stuff with Mal. Like that was just what you did. But even now, seeing, especially as we start losing her, and you're thinking back over the memories, it's easy to see how much the things that she did have impacted what I do now. And so I guess for me, it would have to be Mama, is the most influential person, because she just taught us so much. And she's always loved well and taken care of people well. She's just, yeah.
And that's so, I love that. My, one of the ladies that is actually on the video about my book, she had read it and was in a video for it. And she is a grandmother. And that's what she was talking about, just how much she still invests in her children, even though they're grown, and also in her grandchildren, and how she's using the book for that, because grandparents can make a huge impact in kids' life. And that's what I want. That's the kind of grandma I want to be one day.
Right, exactly.
I mean, I don't have a married child yet or anything, but when I do, I have grandchildren, I want to be very influential in their life, because they're your legacy, they're, and children, that's the wonderful thing about investing in a child, is that they have, in general, so much life left to live. They can make such an impact and in the world. And to be able to take part in that, I think, is a huge blessing to be able to do. So I love that.
Definitely, grandparents listening, don't give up on your kids. Stay involved, because they need you.
Yes, and I still realize that grandchild. And how about your favorite memory verse?
So this is hard. There's several. One that has recently kind of been stuck in my head is Proverbs 16:9. And it says, a man plans his ways, but the Lord directs his steps. Because I'm a big planner. My husband laughs at me because he's like, if it's not on your calendar, it's not happening. But that verse, when I stumbled across it a few years ago, because there were so many things that I wanted and was hoping for, a husband being one of those that I prayed for years. It's 31 now. So I've been praying for several years for husband, and it just wasn't happening. And so that verse to me was a reminder that I can plan as much as I want, but ultimately you need to let the Lord direct where you go. Yes. Because his plans are always better than ours.
Yes.
But so, yeah, there's a lot of verses.
See, now that you're married.
But just that reminder that we can plan all we want, but we need to make sure we're surrendered to whatever his leading is.
Always.
So yeah, Proverbs 16:9 is one of the favorites, but there's several.
I'm a big planner as well, and my calendar has so much stuff on it now that I've even missed some things on my calendar. But yes, I'm very much so like that. But so I have my phone set every 15 minutes during the day for me to have a alarm go off to just remind me to be like, is this what I still should be spending my time on right now? And just kind of a check-in to make sure that I'm in his will rather than in what
to do. Yeah.
There's so many things I would like to get done that my calendar is very busy, but I want to make sure that I'm doing the best things that he wants me to do, And so, any final thoughts that you want to leave our listeners with?
Final thoughts. Invest in kids, invest in people around you, not just kids, invest in people. Because everybody, and I see it all the time, everybody's hurting. Everybody has stuff going on. And so not even just the kids, because the kids are watching everything we do.
Yes.
And so it's not just when we're investing in kids, that's when they're learning from us. It's when they're watching the way we interact with people around us. There was a group, just thinking about that right now, there was a group, I was doing a teacher in service one summer, a couple of years back, and it was supposed to be on issues that teachers dealt with in the classrooms in regards to different disabilities or learning disabilities and things like that. And so I thought, well, we'll make this, most impactful for the teachers. What are like the 3 that you deal with the most? And I was shocked when the answers I got back was bullying, lying and manipulation. I'm like, those are not disabilities. I'm like, those are not listed. And I was blown away. And I'm going, this is not, um, and so, in my job, everything has to be research based. And so I started doing the research. And I was amazed when they were trying to blame the teachers for these behaviors. And I'm like, no, kids don't get a pass on this one. But then I started actually reading it, and it was talking about how the kids observe their teachers and parents bad mouthing people, and then they turn around to that same person and they act all friendly. And I thought, oh my word,
Because kids
might
imitate
actually
you.
be to blame. And not that teachers are bad, because we've all done this. But I'm going, the teachers in that moment don't think the kids are listening in to those conversations between
But they
teachers.
are.
Kids are listening to everything.
And
And
imitating
so
everything.
I guess, final thought, don't just think I'm investing in kids when I'm investing in kids.
Yeah.
You're investing in the people around you all the time. People are watching you. Dad growing up, we learned from other people's mistakes. When they would do something, we would talk about it at home. Because it was hopefully going, this is, the choice they made, and this is the consequence. Let's not do this.
Yes.
And so,
Life examples. Yes.
I mean, what better way to learn? We would do that even in the Bible. The Bible is so full of examples like this that you can learn from.
And how people make mistakes all the time, but God still uses them. And
Absolutely.
I love that. I love how honest the Bible is, because it
Yes.
just shows me it's God's plan that's being worked out, and he can use whoever he wants to fulfill his plan.
David and Thomas are two of my favorite characters in the Bible, because I can relate in a lot of ways. But yeah, so just remember, it's not just investing in kids, when it's you're investing in people around you all the time. Kids need a lot of it. They're going to soak it up, and we have a chance to potentially change them, but we also have that chance with the people we're investing in around us. So don't just look at it as one time thing. It's a lifelong investment that you make when you deal with people.
I love it. Thank you so much, Sarah, for coming on and talking to us. I really appreciate it very much. And I will put your book links in the notes for anybody that might be interested in those as well. So thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.